This story is fascinating to me. Baylor University is based in Waco, Texas. It's a private Christian university. It's a Baptist school. It's the largest Baptist university in the world. And if you aren't familiar with Baylor, but you're a sports fan, you're probably familiar with their women's basketball team. Like they have occasionally really good sports ball teams. But the reason I bring them up this time is because they recently put out a press release earlier this month. Check this out. This is from Baylor. They put out this press release on June 30th. Here we go. Look at this beginning. The Center for Church and Community Impact, this is a building that's on their campus, has been awarded a $643,401 grant from the Eula May and John Bow Foundation to foster inclusion and belonging in the church. Through academic research, this grant will help us better understand the disenfranchisement and exclusion of LGBTQIA plus individuals and women within congregations to nurture institutional courage and foster change. So this is fascinating. Let's talk about a couple elements of this and then we'll go on. At a lot of universities, if you're a researcher, you're a professor at the school, you want to do a big study, you need money to do it. You'll fill out a lot of grant proposals. I have done this and I'm not even a professor, but you fill out the grant proposals, you send it in to the groups that have money that might be interested in funding this thing. And at Baylor, these researchers said, you know what would be very interesting because we're a Baptist university? Let's talk about why so many LGBTQ people and women feel marginalized in our churches. And let's study that. Like, don't just do it anecdotally, but let's see if we could research it and give churches the tools they need so that they can make sure they're not disenfranchising, they're not making women and LGBTQ people feel really shitty. Now, maybe you're thinking my initial thought, which is, hey, maybe it has something to do with your shitty beliefs about how women should be submissive and trans people don't exist and being gay is a sin. Maybe that's kind of the reason. I'll take $500,000 and I will just tell you that to your face. But they're doing rigorous studies on this because, and this is where I think they're going with it, it's not that they want to change those beliefs. They want to figure out if there's a way to still show gay people that they matter, even if they think homosexual acts are a sin. Is there a way to bring them into the fold so that they can reconcile that? Now, on one side, I'm like, no, because your beliefs are the problem. But on the other side, I've seen this many times where churches say, yes, these are our core beliefs, but we do want to be welcoming to people who feel like there's no place for them in our church. I have both of those feelings on this, but I do understand why an academic who works at Baylor would say, we want to study this for real. Give us the tools, the money we need to do it the right way so we can produce resources for churches to say we can help those people. And we can do it a lot better than than what it is right now, where a lot of churches are just jerks to those communities. Okay, that's what they were trying to do. And at Baylor, they got the money to do it, almost $650,000, which is a lot of money for this. Okay. I just want to reiterate, nothing about this study would change the beliefs of Baptists, conservative Baptists, their belief that same-sex relationships are sinful, that marriage equality is bad, that homosexuality is a sin, all that. They are not changing those beliefs. No one was asking that. And I would also point out that while Southern Baptists are notoriously anti-LGBTQ and anti-women, there are a lot of progressive Baptist denominations too, and they support church-state separation, and they support women's rights, and they support LGBTQ rights. So, like, Baptists are a very broad bunch there, okay? And this research is helping all of those people, whoever wants it, reach out to those people properly. And they actually said the way they were going to use this money, they want to recruit students to interview, and they want to create trauma-sensitive training resources that the Baylor researchers can develop for churches to use. Okay, nothing about my point is nothing about this is controversial in academia. Nothing about this is controversial at Baylor. This is something they do all the time. This is something their professors do all the time. And you would assume that the people applying for a grant of this size at Baylor would totally understand what the minefields are. When they announced that grant, this is what one professor said on social media. Grateful for this grant that will help us love better. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're trying to do with this money, create resources to help people. This guy was very enthusiastic about it. And I will also point out the organization that donated this money to the researchers, they said, yeah, this is what we do here. They said we have worked with Baylor for well over 40 years, that they funded a similar project through Baylor's School of Social Work for the past 3 years, and they said it has yielded significant insights. So, like, they've done this before. They have a track record of success, not just the funding organization, but the Baylor researchers at using that money the way it's meant to be used. So, it was a win-win for everybody. And then conservative Christians got mad. Check this out. This is from one person who is like a notorious critic of all things progressive, Megan Basham. So now that the Progressive Bow Foundation has granted Baylor nearly $750,000, it's $640, it's not $750, to promote LGBTQ inclusivity. That's not what the study was. It's worth looking at why Baylor would take this step, sure to anger many Christian families who send their kids to school there. Fact is, they made themselves beholden to this left-wing org long ago. Like, all of this is bullshit. I want to reiterate, they were not promoting LGBTQ inclusivity. In fact, I would argue that if churches are trying to be non-assholes to LGBTQ people and women, when their underlying beliefs are still anti-LGBTQ, I actually find that deceptive. So I don't actually think this is about inclusivity. It's about saying, how can we make sure they don't see us as assholes? And a lot of them have religious trauma from things, we have said to them. How can we make sure we're sending the message we want to send to those people? It's not inclusivity that they're after. You get my point? They just want new members. That's what this is ultimately about. So what this person is saying makes absolutely no sense, but she wasn't alone. This is a theological seminary professor. Look at this one. This is illuminating and sad and not at all surprising. Baylor has been moving away from Christian faithfulness for decades now, but it's still sad to watch another nail in the coffin of a once great Christian university. This is the way right-wingers always talk. Like, every college always used to be great, but then they got woke. They all talk this way. It's a weird sort of rhetoric that they're using here. I like this one from another right-wing pastor. It is much better to send your child to a secular university, hostile to the faith, than to a Christian university like Baylor. Better the wolf with bared fangs than the wolf disguised as a shepherd. Yeah, right, because Baylor's really faking it with the whole Christian thing. Then there was Allie Beth Stuckey, who's a right-wing commentator as well, who she didn't just put out a tweet. She put out a whole friggin' thread. Baylor University took this money to push LGBTQ plus affirmation in churches. It's not affirmation. Then returned it. We'll get back to that. But is this repentance or damage control? A look at the university's moves in recent years reveals the truth. Like, these people will not rest about any of this. I want to point out one other thing. There is a Baptist General Convention of Texas, and the executive director, who's, you would think, has a relationship with every Baptist university in the state. Look at this. This is what he sent out in an email. This week, there has been much chatter regarding an announcement made about a grant given to Baylor for the study of women and LGBTQ inclusion in churches. This has raised concerns and questions. And then he points out, I just want you all to know, in contrast with the universities that are affiliated with us, our relationship with Baylor University is by special agreement. Like, you guys, we have nothing to do with this. Don't be mad at me. I hate gay people. That's how we work here at the Baptist Club. Like, they're just distancing themselves as much as they can. In case you are wondering about Baylor University's actual stance, this is what they have published on their website. Statement on human sexuality. And look at what they say here. They affirm purity in singleness and fidelity in marriage between a man and a woman as the biblical norm. And temptations to deviate include both heterosexual sex outside of marriage and homosexual behavior. If you have same-sex sex in a loving relationship, that's bad. And look at this last line. Oh my God. It is thus expected that Baylor students will not participate in advocacy groups which promote understandings of sexuality that are contrary to biblical teaching. You can't even join an LGBTQ group on campus at Baylor that says nice things about gay people, creates community for them. Because if they think it's advocacy, they're not even allowing it. So Baylor is by no means a safe space for LGBTQ people. And that's why I'm going back to, what was this grant for? It's to study how they can still come off as welcoming to LGBTQ people and women, even though on paper, as I just showed you, they're totally against both of those types of groups. Okay. So, I mean, by the way, I hear this question a lot. If you're a professor, why would you even work at a school like this? They all have reasons for why they go there. Maybe Baylor's the place you can get your research funded, like the one we're talking about now. Everyone has their reasons for being there. But the point is, I don't think it's hypocritical for an anti-LGBTQ university to study the harm that churches can inflict upon LGBTQ people. I don't think that's hypocritical. I think that's par for the course. I think any decent university would see all this backlash and stand its ground and say studying the issue is not the same as affirming same-sex whatever. I mean, and also they could say, by the way, this research is being done by our professors who are the best of the best. Like, defend your own people. That is not what they did. What did Baylor actually do? They put out this statement about a week ago, addressing recent external research grant. And this is from Dr. Linda Livingstone, who is the chancellor. What is she? She's the president, Linda Livingstone. Dean John Singletary and principal investigator Dr. Gaynor Yancey have voluntarily offered to rescind their acceptance of this grant on behalf of the School of Social Work and return all associated funds to the granting foundation. Yeah, the two researchers said, hey, you know what? We'll take it back. You can have the money back. We're not going to do this anymore. Like, did they voluntarily offer to give back the money, or did the school strong arm them and force them to give them back the money? And then they say, what else? As we reviewed the details and process surrounding this grant, our concerns did not center on the research itself, but rather on the activities that followed as part of the grant. Specifically, the work extended into advocacy for perspectives on human sexuality that are inconsistent with our bigotry. Please be assured that we're still bigots. Okay. You mean to tell me that two professors at Baylor, you think they secretly were trying to advocate for this stuff, and they got a grant for this much money from a group that, didn't know where Baylor stands on the issues? Like, there's no way Baylor was advocating same-sex relationships, that women should be in leadership in churches, etc. They're not advocating for it. The grant requesters knew that. The grant givers knew that. The only people who seem to be surprised by any of this are the Baylor administrators, who are like, quick, we got to make a reason for why this grant can't be taken. And they made up a stupid reason. So this is the excuse. Baylor said, we would rather give you back $650,000 because doing this research might make people think we like gay people. And their letter basically says, we're so sorry we allowed our professors to get this much money. It'll never happen again. By the way, keep giving us your donations and don't be mad at us. Utterly stupid. And guess what? It didn't appease the critics. One of those people I showed you earlier, Megan Basham, here's what she said after that letter. Let me explain in this thread why it is not enough for Baylor to simply return that grant, because the grant money is emblematic of rot that has been going on for a long time. Major Christian donors should not allow the school to move on from this without a full house cleaning. And then she goes on and says a bunch of bullshit for a long time. Of course, these people are not satisfied. They found a culture war issue that they can get on top of. Baylor should have known. I never get this with all those Ivy League schools when like Elise Stefanik was questioning them about anti-Semitism. There is nothing you can say that's going to appease Republicans. So stand your ground and defend your school and defend the protesters. Like, why are you caving in and saying, oh, yeah, there is anti-Semitism? No, there isn't. And in this case, too, like, why isn't Baylor saying we defend our professors and the academic integrity of what they were trying to study? Because they're never going to appease these people whose only claim to fame is saying everyone who follows me understands that everyone else is too woke. They're never going to be like, okay, Baylor, you did good. Utterly stupid that Baylor doesn't realize that's going to happen. The most interesting response came from the grant giving organization, which I found really interesting too. Check this out right here. Here we go. This is from the Bow Foundation, and they say a couple things that I found really surprising here. Look at this. This is after Baylor said we're not taking the money. Every member of our board of trustees went to Baylor. They matriculated there. And our family has been funding work at the institution for well over 40 years. We don't ask for these grants. You guys come to us to answer open research questions or to meet campus needs. And look at this one. This was an opportunity to answer the Christian call to care for the marginalized by creating resources and providing important research for faith communities. Our hearts break for the professors, research fellows, and especially the students who will receive this message from Baylor loud and clear. And this is interesting. Our foundation is rooted in Baptist distinctives that include church autonomy and the priesthood of every believer. Not all Baptist believers or churches are aligned on every interpretation of scripture concerning women or LGBTQIA plus individuals, but churches need evidence-based research. The purpose of this research was not to dictate theology, but to better understand the disenfranchisement that those individuals and women often face. Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm saying. Research is not bad. And if someone's going to give you money to do the research into a thing that people associate with Baptists, the bigotry, and you're saying, is there a way we can stop people from thinking we are bigots, especially when we're going in with good intentions and we want to help them, but they want nothing to do with us because they think we hate them, because you do. Is there a way to change that? I get why they would want to research that. And better to research it than just listen to some random pastor rant for like an hour about it. Like, my heart goes out to the funding organization, because they've invested a lot of money into doing this sort of research. I have a soft spot for academic research because it's so hard to get funding for anything. And here's this organization that says, we all went to Baylor. We've given so much money to Baylor to do this type of research. And now you're turning your backs on us. Because why? Because some right-wing bigots whose job is fueling these culture war fires got mad? Like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. So the bottom line is that the critics do not want to understand LGBTQ people and women because they fear this study might generate empathy for people they've written off, and they don't like research because it may contradict their predisposed hatred of outsiders. They love ignorance because typically people who get a formal education tend to oppose a lot of the talking points they spew. So look, I hope this foundation, with $650,000 burning a hole in their pockets, I hope they find a different university to do this study, because it's important to do any type of study for this stuff. They can do it at a Christian school, they can do it at a public university. They need the money even more. I also appreciated this last part that they said right here. Let me show you this at the bottom. This decision disserves Baylor students, faculty, and the broader Christian community. Baylor has a duty to protect and uphold the integrity of scientific inquiry, allowing its world-class faculty to investigate complex issues without fear of reprisal based on shifting political winds. Pulling the rug out from under its faculty after those researchers have already put the grueling work into securing funding. Work they undertook with Baylor's full knowledge and approval is a chilling affront to the very concept of academic freedom. By the way, you may have already seen this in the news, like with all the cuts from Elon Musk and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they're cutting scientific research that is done by a lot of these universities. Now here's a private foundation giving money to do academic research, and the school is saying, we don't want your money. It is unbelievable how many anti-education people are just decimating the research world right now. So again, good for this organization. I hope they find other people to do this. And if you're a professor who is thinking about working at Baylor, you should remember, hey, guess what? Baylor's not going to support you in this if you're trying to do research. Baylor's more than, by the way, that letter sent by the foundation, that's what the school should have put out when they said, yeah, we're keeping this money, we're doing this research, and screw you to all the right-wing haters who don't understand how academia works. Why did the foundation have to put out that letter? That should have been what Linda Livingstone put out. If you're a student who wants to learn, like maybe you thought Baylor was a good school for you, they're showing you it's not worth it. If you're a professor who wants to do research, even if you are a religious professor who wants to do research, Baylor's not going to have your back. Like, I'm sure there are other schools, including Christian ones, that would love to have access to that kind of money and the kind of professors that do this work. And schools that are not going to fall apart if someone writes a mean tweet at them. So very frustrating, very stupid, even though for what it's worth, I don't even necessarily think this was the best type of research to do, because I could have answered the question for you without the research, but I don't get what they're doing. All right, what questions we got here? I actually have my Master of Divinity degree from the seminary at Baylor. When I went there, it was more progressive than it is now. I'm not surprised by that at all. And, you know, there are a lot of, I got my master's degree from a school that is ostensibly religious. Why? Because when you're studying math, I promise you religion played no role in what I did. It was a good school. I got the degree I needed. We shook hands. We parted ways. That's how it should be. But that's the thing. These schools can be really good, especially if what you are studying is the thing they specialize in. Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, a lot of these Christian schools, they now have to deal with criticism from people who don't think they're sufficiently religious, and then they go more extreme and more extreme. Finding better ways. What does this say? Finding a better ways to recruit new members since our membership is declining. What are we talking about? I'm not sure anyway. Sorry about that. Let's skip to the next one. This hurts my brain. They may want to study it, but I'm not buying they're doing it for benevolent reasons. That's where I was basically going with it too. I've worked with organizations that fund research into atheists. Like I was there with them while they were working with these researchers. And basically the way this works is they said, look, we have a pool of money. We are open to you studying how atheism is spread. What helps it spread? What are the obstacles to atheism in different parts of the world? It's kind of like what this organization is doing, but with a focus on religion and atheism in general. And that means a lot of academics wrote long grants saying, I want to study this. I need this much money to make it happen. And this is what I want to do. And no one else would fund something like this. And it's unbelievable the sort of papers that resulted as a result of getting that money and having that funding available. Like, I really value those organizations committed to funding academic research. It's really important. The idea that a university would say, no, we're giving it back to you because some right-wing bloggers said mean things about it, it's very stupid from an academic perspective. Religious institutions still shooting themselves in the foot and wondering why they're hurting. Yeah, and I don't even know if we're talking about Baptist churches in general or Baylor at this point, but like Baptist churches are like, why don't gay people like us? Why do women think we're why do they think we're misogynist? It's like, have you looked at what's preached at your churches? Meanwhile, Baylor's like, we're a top institution. We are a very academic, studious Baptist university. Hey, why are all the researchers no longer wanting to work here?